Commander Zeftos stood on the bridge of his ship, staring at the screen in front of him. The readings made no sense. His best science officer, Veltar, had checked the instruments 3 times already. "Sir, the energy readings are still the same," Veltar said, his 4 arms moving quickly over the control panel. "There is definitely something artificial on that planet." Zeftos scratched his scaled chin. In his 40 years of exploring space for the Cathari Empire, he had never seen anything like this. The planet looked normal from far away. It was the right size for life, had water and air, and orbited its star at a good distance. But the energy readings were strange. "What kind of energy is it?" Zeftos asked. "That's the problem, sir. It's not like anything in our databases. The patterns are organized, too organized to be natural, but they don't match any known technology from any species we know." The Cathari were proud of their knowledge. They had been exploring space for over 1,000 years. They knew about every major species in the galaxy. Their databases contained information about hundreds of different alien technologies. But this was something new. "Could it be a new species?" asked Miraket, the ship's security chief. She was younger than most of the crew, but she had sharp eyes and good instincts. "Possible," Zeftos said, "but look at the location. We're on the outer edge of the galaxy. Most species don't come out this far. There's nothing here worth finding." That was true. This part of space was empty and boring. No valuable minerals. No strategic importance. No trade routes. It was the kind of place that civilizations ignored. "Sir," Veltar said suddenly, his voice excited. "I'm getting better readings now that we're closer. These structures, they're huge. And there are a lot of them." The main screen changed to show a detailed scan of the planet's surface. What they saw made everyone on the bridge go quiet. The planet wasn't just inhabited. It was covered with cities, massive cities that stretched across entire continents. The energy signatures came from thousands of buildings, power plants, and what looked like defensive installations. "This isn't a new colony," Miraket whispered. "This is a major civilization. How did we miss this?" Zeftos was thinking the same thing. The Cathari had the best exploration fleet in the galaxy. Their ships could detect life signs from light years away. How had an entire civilization been hiding out here? "Veltar, scan for communication signals. If there's a civilization this big, they must be talking to each other." "Already doing it, sir. And, sir, I'm finding something very strange." "More strange than a hidden civilization?" "Yes, sir. The communication patterns, they look familiar, very familiar." Veltar's claws clicked against his control panel as he worked. His eyes were wide with confusion and something that might have been fear. "Sir, I think I know why these patterns look familiar. They match something in our historical databases." "What do you mean?" "The communication frequencies, the energy signatures, even the building designs. They all match records from 300 years ago. Records from the human colonies." The bridge went completely silent. Every crew member stared at Veltar. Someone dropped a tool, and the sound echoed in the quiet space. "That's impossible," Miraket said. "The humans are extinct. They were wiped out during the Great Purge Wars. Everyone knows that." Zeftos felt, his heart's beating faster. The humans had been a small species, not very important in galactic politics. They had colonies on maybe 20 planets. When the Purge Wars started, the humans got caught in the middle. Their colonies were destroyed, their ships were captured or destroyed, and their home planet was turned into a wasteland. The Galactic Council had official records. The human species was declared extinct 297 years ago. There were monuments to them on several worlds. Museums displayed human artifacts. Children learned about them in history classes as an example of what happened to species that couldn't protect themselves. "Run the scans again," Zeftos ordered. "Check everything twice." For the next hour, the crew worked frantically. They scanned the planet from every angle. They checked their instruments. They compared the readings to every database they had. The results were always the same. The technology signatures matched human patterns perfectly, but they were also much more advanced than anything humans had ever built. "Sir," Veltar said quietly, "there's something else. The defensive installations I mentioned, they're not just big, they're bigger than anything we have, bigger than anything anyone has." Zeftos looked at the tactical display. Red dots marked defensive positions all over the planet. Each dot represented weapons that could probably destroy his entire fleet. "Are they active?" "Yes, sir." "And sir, I think they know we're here." As if responding to his words, the ship's communication system came to life. A clear, strong signal came from the planet. The voice that spoke was calm and pleasant, but there was something about it that made Zeftos's skin crawl. "Unknown vessel, this is Terran Colonial Defense Control. You are entering restricted space. Please state your intentions and prepare to be escorted to a safe harbor." The voice spoke in perfect Cathari language, but the accent was strange, old-fashioned, like someone who had learned the language from very old books. "Terran?" Miraket whispered. "That's the human word for their species." Zeftos stepped forward to the communication panel. His hands were shaking slightly, but he kept his voice steady. "This is Commander Zeftos of the Cathari Exploration Fleet. We detected unusual energy readings and came to investigate. We were not aware this system was inhabited." There was a pause. When the voice came back, it sounded amused. "Of course you weren't aware, Commander. That was the point. Please follow the navigation beacon we're sending you. Land at the coordinates provided. A diplomatic team will meet you there." "And if we refuse?" Another pause. This one was longer and somehow more threatening. "Commander, you have a fine ship and a brave crew. It would be unfortunate if something happened to them. Please follow the beacon." Zeftos looked at his tactical officer. The young Cathari was staring at his instruments with wide eyes. "Sir, we're being targeted by over 200 weapon systems. I can't even identify half of them." The choice was clear. Follow the beacon or be destroyed by weapons they didn't understand. "Set course for the beacon," Zeftos ordered. "And send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them we've found something impossible." As the ship descended toward the planet, Zeftos stared out at the surface below. Cities stretched to the horizon. Ships moved between the cities, ships that looked like they could outrun and outfight anything the Cathari had. How had the humans survived? How had they built all this? And most importantly, why had they hidden for 300 years? The landing pad they were directed to was massive. It could have held 50 ships the size of theirs, but it was empty except for a small group of figures waiting for them. "Sir," Veltar said softly, "life sign readings from the greeting party. They're definitely human. But, sir, there's something different about them." "Different how?" "I don't." "No, sir. The readings are enhanced somehow. Like they're human, but more than human." Zeftos took a deep breath. In a few minutes, he would be face-to-face with members of a species that was supposed to be extinct. A species that had somehow built a civilization that could threaten the entire Cathari fleet. "Prepare for landing," he ordered. "And everyone remember, we're guests here. Very unwelcome guests." The landing ramp of Zeftos's ship lowered slowly. He walked down it with 6 of his best officers, all wearing their finest uniforms and carrying no weapons. The humans had been very clear about that rule. The first thing he noticed was the air. It was clean and fresh, with a slight smell of growing plants. The second thing he noticed was the welcoming committee. There were 5 humans waiting for them. They looked exactly like the humans in the history books, except for their clothes. Instead of the simple fabric clothing that humans used to wear, these humans were dressed in what looked like advanced military uniforms. The material seemed to shift color slightly as they moved, and there were small devices attached to their clothing that Zeftos didn't recognize. The human in front was a woman with dark hair and calm brown eyes. She stepped forward and raised her hand in what Zeftos recognized as a human greeting gesture. "Commander Zeftos, welcome to Haven Colony. I am Director Sarah Chen. We apologize for the threatening welcome, but we've learned to be careful with visitors." Her voice was the same one they had heard on the radio. She spoke Cathari perfectly, but there was still that strange old accent. "Director Chen," Zeftos replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "I must admit we're very surprised to find humans here. Our records show that your species was declared extinct nearly 300 years ago." Sarah Chen smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. "Yes, we know what your records show. We made sure of that." "You made sure of that?" "Commander, there's a lot to explain, and this landing pad isn't the best place for it. Would you and your officers like to join us for a proper meeting? We've prepared facilities that should be comfortable for Cathari physiology." Zeftos looked around the landing pad. It was surrounded by buildings that reached up into the sky. Ships moved overhead. Ships, with designs he had never seen before. In the distance, he could see more cities spread out across the landscape. "This is quite a colony you have here," he said. "Thank you. We've been working on it for a while." One of Zeftos's officers, a young engineer named Keptar, spoke up. "Director Chen, if you don't mind me asking, how many people live here?" "On Afar." "This planet? About 40 million?" The Cathari officers looked at each other in shock. 40 million was more than lived on some major Cathari worlds. 40 million, repeated Miraket. "But how is that possible? The human population was never more than a few billion across all your colonies, and that was before the wars." Sarah Chen's expression became more serious. "Like I said, there's a lot to explain. Shall we go inside?" They followed the humans into the nearest building. The inside was even more impressive than the outside. The walls seemed to be made of some kind of smart material that provided perfect lighting without any visible light sources. The floors were soft but supportive, adjusting to each person's weight and walking style. "Your technology," Veltar said quietly, "it's quite advanced." "Thank you," said one of the other humans, a tall man with gray hair. "We've had some time to work on improvements." They were led to a large room with a table and chairs, sized for both humans and Cathari. The walls showed a view of the city, outside, but Zeftos suspected it was more than just a window. "Please sit," Sarah Chen said. "Can we offer you anything? Water? Food? We have information about Cathari dietary needs." "Just water, thank you," Zeftos said. He was too nervous to eat. A moment later, containers of water appeared on the table. They were the perfect temperature and in containers shaped for Cathari. Hands. "Now," Sarah Chen said, settling into her chair, "I'm sure you have questions." "Many questions," Zeftos said, "but the most important one is simple. How are you here? How are any of you here?" "That's a long story, Commander. Let me start with a question for you. What do you know about the Great Purge Wars?" Zeftos thought back to his history lessons. They were a series of conflicts that happened about 300 years ago. Several species fought over territory and resources. Many colonies were destroyed, including all the human colonies. The wars ended when the major powers signed peace treaties. "That's the official version," Sarah Chen said, "but it's not quite correct." She touched a device on the table and the walls around them changed. Instead of showing the city outside, they now showed star maps and battle recordings. The truth is that the wars were started deliberately by several major powers who wanted to eliminate smaller species and take their territories. Humans weren't the only target, but we were one of the main ones. The recordings showed space battles and destroyed colonies. Zeftos recognized some of the ships as belonging to species that were still major powers today. "We knew what was coming," Sarah Chen continued. "Our intelligence services had learned about the plans months before the first attacks. We had a choice. We could fight a war we couldn't win, or we could try something else." "Something else?" "We could disappear." Another human, a woman with short blonde hair, spoke for the first time. "My name is Dr. Rebecca Walsh. I was part of the team that planned what we called the Exodus Protocol. Exodus Protocol? The plan was simple in concept, but difficult to execute. We would make it look like humanity had been completely destroyed, while actually evacuating our entire population to hidden colonies. Dr. Walsh touched the control device, and the walls showed new images. They were pictures of destroyed colonies, burning cities, and refugee ships being attacked. "We destroyed our own colonies," she said. "We made it look like we were being wiped out. We even sacrificed some of our ships and settlements to make the deception complete." Zeftos felt sick. "You destroyed your own people?" "We evacuated them." "First," Sarah Chen said quickly, "every single person who wanted to leave was brought to safety. The only casualties were volunteers who stayed behind to make the deception work." "But why?" Miraket asked. "Why go through all that? Why not just ask for help from the Galactic Council?" The humans looked at each other. There was something in their expressions that made Zeftos uncomfortable. "Because the Galactic Council was part of the problem," Sarah Chen said. "Several council members were involved in planning the purges. They wanted the smaller species eliminated." The room went quiet. This was much more serious than Zeftos had expected. "You're accusing the Galactic Council of genocide," he said carefully. "We're not accusing them, Commander. We're stating a fact. We have the records to prove it." Dr. Walsh activated another display. This one showed documents and communication records. Even from a distance, Zeftos could see official council seals and signatures. "We spent the first 50 years after our extinction gathering evidence," Dr. Walsh said. "We have communications between council members discussing how to divide up human territory. We have records of weapons shipments to the forces that attacked our colonies. We have everything." "Why haven't you presented this evidence?" Keptar asked. "To who?" Sarah Chen asked. "The same council that planned the genocide? The same governments that benefited from it?" She had a point. If the evidence was real, then the entire galactic government was corrupt. "So you've been hiding here for 300 years, Zeftos said. "Not just here," said the gray-haired man. "Haven Colony is just one of many. We have settlements throughout this region of space." "How many?" "Enough," Sarah Chen said. "Commander, we didn't just hide. We rebuilt. We grew. We developed new technologies. We've become something much more than we were before the wars." "What do you mean?" Sarah Chen stood up and walked to one of the walls. She placed her hand on it, and the entire wall became transparent, showing the city outside in perfect detail. "Look around you, Commander. What do you see?" Zeftos looked. He saw a city that was more advanced than anything on the Cathari homeworld. He saw ships that moved with impossible grace. He saw technology that shouldn't exist. "We see a civilization that's supposed to be extinct," he said. "You see a civilization that's been preparing," Sarah Chen said. "Preparing for the day when we would have to reveal ourselves." "Why now? Why reveal yourselves to us?" Sarah Chen turned back to face him. Her expression was very serious. "Because, Commander, the galaxy is in danger. The same forces that tried to destroy us 300 years ago are moving again, and this time, they're not just targeting small species." "What do you mean?" "I mean that you and your people are next on their list, and we're the only ones who can help you." Zeftos felt his blood go cold. "What do you mean we're next?" Sarah Chen walked back to the table but didn't sit down. Instead, she touched the control device again. The walls around them changed to show a map of the galaxy. Red dots appeared in several locations. "Commander, what I'm about to show you is classified at the highest levels. Before we continue, I need you to understand that this information cannot leave this room until we decide how to proceed. You're asking me to keep secrets from my own government." "I'm asking you to help us save your government." Zeftos looked at his officers. They all looked as confused and worried as he felt. But there was something about Sarah Chen's manner that made him believe she was telling the truth. "Show us," he said. The galaxy map zoomed in on different areas. Each red dot expanded to show detailed information about planets, military installations, and fleet movements. For the past 50 years, we've been monitoring galactic activities very carefully, Dr. Walsh said. We've noticed patterns that match what happened before the Great Purge Wars. What kind of patterns? Miraket asked. Mysterious. Accidents happening to military leaders who ask too many questions. Trade disputes that turn into armed conflicts. Small species suddenly having internal wars that weaken them. Resource shortages that force governments to make desperate deals. The map showed dozens of incidents across the galaxy. When viewed together, they formed a clear pattern of manipulation and control. Someone has been pulling strings across the entire galaxy, Sarah Chen said. The same someone who orchestrated the Great Purge Wars. But who? Veltar asked. Who has that kind of power? Not who, Commander. What? The map changed again. This time, it showed something that made Zeftos's hearts skip a beat. It was a star chart of the area beyond the galaxy's edge, and it showed movement, lots of movement. 300 years ago, during our evacuation, some of our deep space scouts detected something disturbing, Dr. Walsh said. Ships. Thousands of ships, moving toward our galaxy from outside. Ships from where? From another galaxy entirely. We call them the Devourers. A new image appeared on the walls. It showed a ship unlike anything Zeftos had ever seen. It was enormous, easily the size of a small moon. Its shape was wrong somehow, as if it had been grown instead of built. The Devourers are not like us, Sarah Chen explained. They don't have individual minds the way we do. They share a collective consciousness. When they conquer a species, they don't just take their territory. They take their knowledge, their memories, their entire culture, and add it to their collective. That's impossible, Keptar said. How could they do that? We don't fully understand it ourselves, Dr. Walsh admitted. But we've seen the results. Entire civilizations that simply vanish, leaving behind empty worlds and no trace of what happened to the people. The images on the walls showed empty planets, cities that looked abandoned but not destroyed, ships floating in space with no one aboard. The Great Purge Wars weren't random, Sarah Chen continued. They were preparation. The Devourers had agents already in the galaxy. They were weakening the major powers and eliminating smaller species that might cause problems later. Agents? Zeftos asked. Individuals from various species who had been converted. They still looked normal, but they were working for the Devourers. Some of them might not even have known it themselves. This was getting worse and worse. Zeftos tried to think of any suspicious behavior he had seen from government officials or military leaders. There had been some strange decisions lately, some policies that didn't make sense. How do you know all this? Because we've been fighting them, Sarah Chen said simply. The walls showed new images. These were battle recordings, but not like any battles Zeftos had seen before. The human ships moved with incredible speed and precision. Their weapons seemed to tear holes in space itself, and they were fighting against ships that looked like the Devourer vessel they had seen earlier. For 300 years, we've been preparing for their arrival, Dr. Walsh said. We knew they were coming, but we didn't know when. We used the time to develop new technologies, new weapons, new defenses. All in secret, Miraket said. Yes. Because we knew that if the galaxy learned the truth too early, it would cause panic. Wars would break out. The major powers would fight each other instead of preparing for the real threat. Zeftos was beginning to understand. So you've been protecting the galaxy without anyone knowing. Exactly. Every time a Devourer scout ship entered our space, we destroyed it. Every time one of their agents tried to cause major disruptions, we stopped them. Every time they tried to establish a foothold in our galaxy, we drove them back. But now something has changed, Sarah Chen said. The advanced scouts have stopped coming. That means the main fleet is close. The galaxy map appeared. Again, But this time it showed a massive formation of ships just outside the galaxy's edge. There were thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands. Our long-range sensors detected them 6 months ago, Dr. Walsh said. They'll be here within the year. Why are you telling us this now? Zeftos asked. Because we can't stop them alone, Sarah Chen said. We're powerful, but not that powerful. We need the galaxy's military forces to work with us, but first, those forces need to know what they're really fighting. And they need to be equipped with the right weapons, added the gray-haired man, who had introduced himself as General Marcus Torres. Our technology is specifically designed to fight the Devourers. Standard galactic weapons won't work against them. What do you mean? Devourer ships adapt, Dr. Walsh explained. If you hit them with an energy weapon, they develop resistance to that type of energy. If you use projectile weapons, they develop armor against those projectiles. Traditional tactics don't work. So how do you fight them? We developed weapons that change faster than they can adapt, General Torres said. Weapons that use principles they can't copy because those principles require something the Devourers don't have. Which is individual creativity, Sarah Chen said. The Devourers share all knowledge instantly across their collective. That makes them very efficient, but it also makes them predictable. They always choose the most logical solution to any problem. Humans don't always choose the logical solution, Dr. Walsh added with a slight smile. Sometimes we do things that make no sense tactically but work anyway. The Devourers can't predict that kind of behavior. Zeftos was trying to process all of this information. It was almost too much to believe. But the evidence was right in front of him. The technology, the ships, the detailed knowledge of galactic politics, it all fit together. What do you want from us? He asked. First, we want you to verify what... We're telling you, Sarah Chen said. We'll give you access to our databases, our sensor records, everything we have. Take it back to your government. Let them check it against their own intelligence. And then? Then we want them to make a choice. They can work with us to defend the galaxy, or they can ignore the threat and hope for the best. But if they choose to work with you, what would that mean? It would mean accepting human leadership in the war effort, General Torres said. It would mean using our weapons and following our tactics. It would mean trusting a species that's supposed to be extinct. Zeftos could already imagine how his government would react to that suggestion. The Cathari were proud warriors. They had been the galaxy's dominant military power for centuries. The idea of following orders from humans would be very hard for them to accept. There's something else, Sarah Chen said quietly. Something we haven't told you yet. What? The reason the Devourers are coming now. The reason they've stopped sending scouts and started moving their main fleet. Why? Because they've learned about us. They know that humans are still alive, and they know we've been interfering with their plans. Sarah Chen's expression was grim. Commander, the Devourers aren't just coming to conquer the galaxy anymore. They're coming specifically to wipe out humanity once and for all. And they're willing to destroy every other species in the galaxy to make sure they get us. The room went silent. The weight of what she had said settled over everyone like a heavy blanket. So you see, Sarah Chen continued, this isn't just about saving the galaxy from conquest. It's about preventing the complete destruction of all life in our galaxy. Zeftos felt like he was drowning in impossible choices. Everything he thought he knew about the galaxy had been turned upside down in the space of a few hours. How long do we have? He asked. To make the decision? Or to prepare for war? Both. The Devourer fleet will reach the outer systems in 8 to 10 months, Dr. Walsh said. But the decision needs to be made much sooner than that. If we're going to have any chance of winning, we need to start coordinating galactic defenses immediately. And if the galactic governments refuse to cooperate? Sarah Chen and General Torres looked at each other. There was something in their expressions that made Zeftos very nervous. Then we'll do what we've always done, Sarah Chen said. We'll protect the galaxy whether they want us to or not." Sarah Chen led them through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The building was much larger inside than it had looked from the outside. As they walked, Zeftos noticed details that made him increasingly uncomfortable. The walls showed displays of information, star charts, military data, surveillance footage from dozens of different worlds. Some of the footage showed Cathari military bases. Some showed the chambers where the Galactic Council met. All of it was being recorded without permission. "You've been watching us," he said. "We've been watching everyone," Sarah Chen replied. "Commander, let me show you something that will help you understand why." They entered a large chamber filled with screens and control stations. Humans worked at various posts, monitoring information flows from across the galaxy. But what caught Zeftos's attention was the center of the room. There was a large, transparent container, roughly the size of a small vehicle. Inside the container was something that made his skin crawl. It looked partly like a machine and partly like a living creature. Metal and flesh seemed to flow together in patterns that hurt to look at. The thing was clearly alive. He could see it breathing and moving slightly. But it was also clearly artificial. "What is that?" Veltar whispered. "That," said Dr. Walsh, "is a devourer agent. We captured it 6 months ago when it tried to infiltrate the Cathari military command." Zeftos felt sick. "It tried to infiltrate our command?" "Successfully infiltrated," General Torres corrected. "We stopped it just before it reached its target." "What was its target?" "Admiral Kepros, your fleet commander." Zeftos knew Admiral Kepros personally. The Admiral was a good officer and a loyal Cathari. The idea that something like this creature had almost reached him was terrifying. "How? Does it work?" Mirak had asked, though she looked like she didn't really want to know the answer. "The Devourers can take any organic being and convert them," Dr. Walsh explained. "The process replaces parts of their brain with organic technology that connects them to the Devourer collective. From the outside, they look exactly the same. They even have most of their original memories and personality. But they're not really themselves anymore," Sarah Chen added. "They're extensions of the Devourer consciousness. Everything they see and hear gets reported back to the collective." "How many of these agents are there?" Zeftos asked. "We don't know exactly. We've identified and eliminated 47 over the past decade. But there are probably more." The implications were staggering. If the Devourers had agents throughout the galaxy's governments and militaries, then they knew everything about Galactic. "Defenses. This is why we couldn't work through official channels," Sarah Chen said. "We never knew who we could trust." Dr. Walsh activated a control panel, and new displays appeared around the room. They showed detailed scans of the captured agent. "The good news is that we've learned how to detect them," she said. "The conversion process leaves traces that our scanners can pick up. The bad news is that our detection technology doesn't work at long range." "How long range?" "About 50 meters. To detect an agent, we need to be in the same room with them." General Torres stepped forward. "Commander, we've scanned your entire crew. You're all clean. No Devourer modifications." Zeftos felt a moment of relief, followed immediately by anger. "You scanned us without permission?" "Would you have given permission if we had asked?" He had to admit that he probably wouldn't have, but it still felt like a violation. "The point is," Sarah Chen said, "we can help you identify agents in your government and military, but only if you're willing to work with us." She led them to another section of the chamber. This area was filled with weapon displays and armor, suits that looked like nothing Zeftos had ever seen. "These are the weapons we've developed to fight the Devourers," General Torres explained. "They work on principles that the Devourers can't adapt to quickly." He picked up what looked like a simple rifle. But when he activated it, energy patterns flowed along its surface in complex, constantly changing designs. "This weapon fires quantum-entangled particles," he said. "Each shot is unique at the quantum level. The Devourers can't develop resistance because no two shots are exactly the same. And this, Dr. Walsh said, indicating a suit of armor, provides protection that adapts faster than Devourer weapons can adjust. It uses human intuition patterns to make random defensive changes. Human intuition patterns? The armor is linked to the wearer's subconscious mind. It makes defensive adjustments based on gut feelings and instinct rather than logical analysis. Since the Devourers operate on pure logic, they can't predict what the armor will do. Zeftos examined the weapons and armor more closely. The technology was incredibly advanced, but it was also somehow familiar. The design principles felt human, even though they were far beyond anything humans should have been able to build. "How did you develop all this?" he asked. 300 years of focused research, Sarah Chen said. When you're fighting for the survival of your entire species, you tend to be very motivated. And you've tested these weapons? Extensively. Every time the Devourers sent scouts into our territory, we captured some and tested our equipment against them. We've refined our technology through dozens of small battles. General Torres activated a holographic display that showed battle recordings. Zeftos watched human ships fighting against Devourer vessels. The human weapons seemed to tear through Devourer defenses easily, while the Devourer weapons barely scratched the human ships. "But Commander," Sarah Chen said, "weapons are only part of the solution. The real challenge is coordination." "What do you mean?" "The Devourers fight as a single collective consciousness. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon is perfectly coordinated. They don't have communication delays or strategic disagreements. When they decide to do something, every unit acts immediately. Galactic forces don't work that way," Dr. Walsh added. "Each species has different command structures, different tactics, different equipment. In a traditional battle, that diversity can be a strength. Against the Devourers, it's a fatal weakness. So what's the solution?" "Unified command," General Torres said. "Every ship, every weapon, every soldier needs to be under a single command structure that can make decisions fast enough to match the Devourer collective." Zeftos was beginning to see where this was leading. "And you want that command structure to be human." "We don't want it," Sarah Chen said. "We're willing to do it because it's necessary. Commander, we've been studying the Devourers for 3 centuries. We understand how they think, how they fight, how they can be defeated. No other species has that knowledge. But you're asking the galaxy's governments to give up their military independence. We're asking them to choose between independence and survival." Sarah Chen led them to one final display. This one showed a simulation of what would happen if the Devourers invaded without unified resistance. The simulation was horrifying. World after world fell to the Devourer fleet. Entire civilizations were converted or destroyed. Within 2 years, the galaxy was empty except for Devourer ships. "This is what happens if we fight separately," Dr. Walsh said. "The Devourers defeat, each species one at a time, adding their knowledge and resources to the collective with each victory." "And this," General Torres said, starting a different simulation, "is what happens if we fight together." This simulation showed a coordinated defense. Galactic forces equipped with human weapons and following human tactics met the Devourer fleet at the galaxy's edge. The battle was fierce, but the combined forces held. Some worlds were lost, but the galaxy survived. "The difference is dramatic," Sarah Chen said, "but it requires complete trust and cooperation." Zeftos studied the simulations carefully. The tactical analysis looked solid, but the political implications were staggering. "My government will want proof," he said. "More proof than just simulations and captured agents." "We understand," Sarah Chen said. "That's why we're prepared to give you a demonstration." "What kind of demonstration?" "There's a Devourer scouting fleet approaching the Vega system. 3 ships, fairly small. They'll arrive in about 2 weeks." "How do you know that?" "Because we've been tracking their movements for months. Commander, would you like to watch us destroy that fleet?" Zeftos felt his heart's racing. You're offering to let us observe actual combat? More than observe. We're offering to let you participate. Your ship can join our task force. You can see our weapons and tactics in action. You can verify everything we've told you. And after that? After that, you take everything you've learned back to your government. You show them the evidence, the technology, the tactical data. You let them make their choice. But what if they choose wrong? What if they refuse to cooperate? Sarah Chen's expression became very serious. Then we'll fight the Devourers ourselves, and we'll do whatever it takes to protect the galaxy, even if that means making decisions that other species don't like. What kind of decisions? The kind that prioritize survival over politics. Zeftos didn't like the sound of that, but he was beginning to understand the impossible position the humans were in. They had knowledge and technology that could save the galaxy, but they couldn't use it effectively without cooperation from the very governments they had been hiding from. "Commander," Sarah Chen said quietly, "we've been carrying this burden." 2 weeks later, Zeftos stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the most incredible battle he had ever seen. His vessel was part of a small human fleet approaching the Vega system, where 3 Devourer scout ships waited. The human ships were unlike anything in the Galactic fleet. They moved with perfect coordination, as if they were all controlled by a single mind. But Zeftos knew they weren't. Each ship had its own captain and crew. They were just that well trained. Devourer ships. "Detected," announced the tactical officer on the human command ship. The voice came through the communication system clearly. "Beginning approach pattern Alpha 7. Zeftos watched the tactical display. The human ships spread out in a formation that made no sense according to standard military doctrine. They left huge gaps in their defensive lines and seemed to be approaching from the worst possible angles. "Commander Chen," he said over the radio, "your formation looks very vulnerable." Sarah Chen's voice came back calm and confident. "That's the point, Commander. We want the Devourers to think they have easy targets." The Devourer ships began moving toward the human fleet. They were massive vessels, each one larger than a Keth-Ari battleship. Their hulls seemed to shift and change as they moved, adapting to threats that didn't exist yet. "All ships," Sarah Chen announced, "prepare for Pattern Omega engagement. Remember, unpredictability is our greatest weapon." "Pattern Omega?" Zeftos asked. "You'll see," Dr. Walsh said. She was on his bridge as an observer and advisor. "Every battle against the Devourers is different. We never use the same tactics twice." The Devourer ships opened fire first. Their weapons were unlike anything Zeftos had seen before. Instead of energy beams or projectiles, they fired what looked like living metal that moved through space like liquid, seeking targets and adapting its properties as it moved. The human ships didn't try to dodge. Instead, they flew directly into the incoming fire. Zeftos was sure he was about to watch the entire human fleet get destroyed. But something impossible happened. The Devourer weapons simply passed through the human ships without causing any damage. "How?" Veltar gasped. "Phase shifting," Dr. Walsh explained. "Our ships can temporarily shift into a different dimensional phase. The Devourer weapons exist in normal space, so they can't touch us while we're shifted." "But how can you fight back? If you're in a different dimension?" "Watch." The human ships suddenly became solid again, but now they were inside the Devourer formation. At point-blank range, they opened fire with weapons that seemed to tear holes in space itself. The Devourer ships tried to adapt. Their hulls began changing, developing new armor and defensive systems. But the human weapons changed faster. Each shot was different from the last, using different principles, different energy types, different approaches. One Devourer ship fired, a new type of weapon that created a gravity well around one of the human ships. But the human ship responded by splitting into 3 smaller ships, each one escaping the gravity well from a different direction. "The ships can split apart?" Miraket asked in amazement. "Modular design," Dr. Walsh said. "Every human ship can separate into smaller units or combine with other ships to form larger ones. The Devourers can't adapt to changing ship configurations fast enough. The battle continued for 20 minutes. The Devourer ships fought desperately, using weapons and tactics that Zeftos had never imagined. But every time they adapted to one human strategy, the humans switched to something completely different. Finally, the last Devourer ship exploded in a burst of strange energy. The human fleet regrouped and began scanning the debris. Battle concluded, Sarah Chen announced. No human casualties, all Devourer vessels destroyed. Recovery teams, begin salvage operations. Zeftos was speechless. He had just watched a small human fleet destroy 3 ships that should have been able to defeat a much larger force. How many ships do you have? He asked Dr. Walsh. Enough, she said. But Commander, what you just saw was a minor skirmish. When the main Devourer fleet arrives, there will be thousands of ships, not 3. Over the next few days, the humans showed Zeftos and his crew everything. They toured the salvage operations, where human scientists studied the destroyed Devourer technology. They visited hidden military bases throughout the sector. They saw the massive shipyards where new human vessels were being built. But the most impressive thing was the scope of the human operation. There were colonies in dozens of star systems, millions of humans living and working in secret. An entire civilization that had been growing and developing for 3 centuries while the rest of the galaxy thought they were extinct. This is incredible, Keptar said as they toured a massive research facility. You've built a civilization that rivals any of the major galactic powers. Actually, General Torres said, we've built something much more powerful than any of the major galactic powers. We've built a civilization that's completely focused on a single goal, which is survival. Not just human survival, but the survival of all life in the galaxy. They showed Zeftos the strategic plans for the coming war. The humans had detailed information about every major military installation in the galaxy. They knew the strengths and weaknesses of every species' technology. They had contingency plans for dozens of different scenarios. You've been planning this for 300 years, Zeftos said. We've been preparing for 300 years, Sarah Chen corrected. Planning is what we're doing now. She brought up a holographic display of the galaxy. Red arrows showed the expected Devourer invasion routes. Blue symbols marked the positions of galactic military forces. Green symbols showed hidden human assets. If the galactic governments cooperate with us, we can establish a defensive line here, she said, pointing to a region near the galaxy's edge. We can stop the Devourers before they penetrate far into inhabited space. And if they don't cooperate, then we fall back to contingency plans. We protect what we can and try to minimize the damage. What does that mean exactly? Sarah Chen hesitated. It means we prioritize the survival of the galaxy over the sovereignty of individual governments. We make decisions based on tactical necessity rather than political acceptability. Zeftos was beginning to understand why the humans had been so secretive. The power they had accumulated was enormous. If they chose to use it for conquest rather than defense, they could probably take over the entire galaxy. You're asking us to trust you with everything, he said. Yes, we are. How do we know you won't use this power against us after the Devourers are defeated? Sarah Chen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was tired. Commander, do you know what it's like to carry the burden of an entire galaxy's survival? Do you know what it's like to sacrifice everything your people are for the sake of everyone else's future? She gestured to the displays around them, showing the vast human civilization that existed in secret. We could have revealed ourselves years ago. We could have demanded recognition, territory, representation in the Galactic Council. We could have used our technology to become the dominant power in the galaxy. Why didn't you? Because that wasn't the mission. The mission was to prepare for the Devourers. Everything else was secondary. General Torres stepped forward. Commander, we've spent 3 centuries proving that we can be trusted. We've protected the galaxy without asking for anything in return. We've sacrificed our own interest for the greater good over and over again. But now we need help, Dr. Walsh added. The final battle is coming, and it's too big for us to handle alone. We can't save the galaxy by ourselves, no matter how advanced our technology is. Sarah Chen activated one more display. This one showed population figures for all the major species in the galaxy. There are over 2 trillion intelligent beings in our galaxy, she said. Humans make up less than 1% of that population. We can't protect 2 trillion people by ourselves. But you can teach others how to protect themselves. Exactly. But only if they're willing to learn. Zeftos looked at the strategic displays one more time. The scope of the threat was enormous. The scope of the human preparation was equally enormous. But the scope of the cooperation required was beyond anything the galaxy had ever attempted. What exactly are you asking for? He said. Complete integration of all galactic military forces under human command, Sarah Chen said. Immediate deployment of human weapons and technology to all major fleets. Identification and elimination of all devourer agents in government and military positions. And absolute trust that we will use this power only to defend the galaxy. That's asking for a lot. Yes, it is. But, Commander, consider the alternative. She activated the simulation they had shown him before, the one where the galaxy fell to the devourers in less than 2 years. The choice is simple, she said. Trust us with temporary command authority, or watch everything you've ever cared about get absorbed into the Devourer Collective. Zeftos closed his eyes and tried to think. Everything the humans had shown him pointed to the same conclusion. They were telling the truth about the threat. They were telling the truth about their capabilities. And they were probably telling the truth about being the galaxy's only hope. But accepting their help meant accepting human dominance. It meant admitting that his proud warrior people needed to follow the lead of a species they had considered primitive and